Good afternoon and welcome to the Demolition Daily LiveStream. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. My guest today is Neil Edwards, CEO of market intelligence provider The Builders Conference. Neil and his team annually gather details of more than £60 billion worth of new construction contract awards. As a result, Neil's probably got his finger on the pulse of the UK construction sector like nobody else. Over the next 20 minutes or thereabouts, we're going to look at the performance of the construction sector here in the UK over the start of the year. And we're also trying to look at the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown as well. And probably most of all, we'll be looking ahead to see if we can get some sort of handle on the prospects for the sector in the second half of the year. We've already received a few questions in advance, but if you have any questions of your own, please post them in the comments here on Facebook, and we'll try to address them as we go along. In the meantime, let's get Neil on the show. Good afternoon, Neil.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. A little more beardy than the last time we spoke, but yeah, we're not doing too badly. It's the obvious question. It's the place that we always start. What are the scores on the doors for April? Has work dried up and has it all gone horribly wrong?
Well, it's strange. We've researched something like over £9.7 billion of new construction awards in April, which is a huge number. When we used to last year 4 or 5 billion, and last month was a little bit, even that was a little bit strange, about 7 billion. But this month is 9 billion. However, that kind of masks probably the true story, because £4.5 billion of that sum is actually in infrastructure projects, which are obviously coming from the government side of things. And the number of projects themselves that we found this month is just over 520, whereas last month it was nearly 700. So we're 20% down by number of projects. It's just you've got these couple of marquee projects at the top that are kind of skewing the figures a little bit, really.
But that makes.
But the actual.
I was going to say that really makes no sense whatsoever. You know, we've been in lockdown, you know, depending who you are and where you are, for the best part of 2 months now. And last month was a mega month, and this month is an even bigger mega month. Can you explain that?
No. The only things I can think about is, the market is skewed this month, not only by the infrastructure, but also housing. Okay. Now, housing could be a little bit different as well, because even though a lot of the sites are probably shut or just started to reopen now, there probably is a situation where planning consent is very much geared to the contract. So therefore, they're going to try and get on site, even if it's an initial start, so they don't lose their planning. And so they may do £50,000 worth of work as an entrance or a temporary road or something like that, but they're kind of putting on that. So what's going through the books of these businesses is probably different to what they're saying their contract award is. So that's what we can't get to, because we can't ask them what's going through their accounts or anything like that. But the positive spin on that is definitely the fact that when we do get the other side, we've got all this work. Hopefully, we're going to be able to do something.
Right. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. But who are the big winners? You mentioned a couple of marquee projects. Who are the big winners this month?
Well, the largest project of them all, and top of the list this month, is Bam Nuttall. Now, remember that name as well. That's a single project, this is, and that's for £2.2 billion. And it's the Staley Bridge to Leeds Trans-Pennine route upgrade. So it's quite a significant project over a significant amount of time. And that's what also, if you remember some of the government pledges where we borrowed your votes from up north and we want to repay you, I think some of this is part of that as well, is to indicate we are still thinking about the country as well. It's not just London centric. So we're going to put the contract in. Now, start date is unknown. So there might be initial carrying out of infrastructure or investigation works now, but the start date is unknown. But yeah, Bam Nuttall are top of the tree this month. And they're also second in a joint venture with Morgan Sindall. And this is also another infrastructure type work, and it's the Smart Motorways Programme. And it's the Highways England Strategic Road Network 10-year framework. So they've also been included in that. Now, we don't know the split because obviously joint ventures is obviously confidential, but that's a £1.5 billion project. So just out of those two, there's £3.7 billion worth of work, which take that off of the actual figures, you're down to six straight away, £6 billion. So we are less than last month. And then third place on the list is actually Mace. Now, this is the first, shall we say, not traditional, but non-infrastructure project. It's for a new office development in Leadenhall Street, and that's worth about £480 million worth of work. Fourth on the list is a company that we don't often have and don't often talk about. It's a company called Domis Construction. Now they're starting a £300 million works in Albion Street in Manchester, and that's for mixed use development. Now there's housing, there's offices, it looks like there's also public realm, etc., etc., etc. So it's a fairly unique project in Manchester. Going for number 5 on the list, that is actually a company called Inland Homes. Now they are, as the name suggests, this is for a £200 million project in Basildon, and it's a new development of 600 homes. So it could be one of those ones that is just starting, just a bit of infrastructure. And then we go back to infrastructure, which is a £200 million job, another 200. Now this is also partly to do with the an extra works to the Transpennine route upgrade. This is though a network rail joint venture between Volker Rail, J Murphy, and Siemens. So that's actually a joint venture between all of those. Other ones to speak about in the month, really, marquee projects. We've got a £163 million project in Barking for Wilmot Dixon, which is housing. Gears, the perennial people that look at the number of projects per month, get the most number of projects this month as well. They've got something like, at the moment, I'm just looking down my list now, I think it's 15 Kia secured this month, which is slightly down on their usual, which is approximately one a day, about 22, 23. That's what we normally look at. So that's still very good. The largest one of them is a £29 million project in Cardiff. So it's spread out a bit there. And that's for dwellings as well. So, yeah, it's an okay month. We only get information from when the contracts are awarded. It's not when they're starting on site, it's the contract awarded. So there might be a day, because we've obviously got this issue with supply of materials now. That's going to affect when projects are going to start or how delayed they're going to be.
Now, we've obviously lived through a couple of years now where London, or Greater London, has been far and away the strongest geographic region. My guess is, with all the infrastructure stuff that you're talking about in the north, that's not the case this month.
No, top spot goes to Yorkshire, and obviously with all those projects, over 2.7 billion, and London is 2.6 billion. So, and then the rest of the country is the northwest with that Manchester project that I spoke about. That's third on the list. You've still got quite a lot in the Midlands going on. Obviously, some of that is to do with the Commonwealth Games in 2022, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah. We've just had a comment in from Scott Laird, who is actually in the States, but he is a Scot. He hasn't heard any mention of Scotland. What's Scotland doing at the moment?
I think that's been hit the hardest. Our indications and records show that they have very much adhered to closing down their sites. So therefore, that's one part of it. But this month, all we've found in Scotland is £298 million worth of new contracts, which is down. It's down about 20%. And I think it just seems that the devolved governments are working slightly differently, and Scotland isn't doing as well this month.
That has been a real eye opener for me personally. You know, I've been watching that with considerable interest. I mean, I've made it very, very public that my personal view was that, you know, unless it was vital, sites should have been shut, regardless of whether you're in England, Scotland, or Wales, or wherever. But the Scots took that very seriously and continue to do so. And yet, here in England, we do seem desperately keen to get back to work. Financially, I think, you know, we may be better off. It remains to be seen whether we'd be better off health-wise at the end of the day.
And that's the balance, isn't it? I think you're right. I think financially, we will be able to start up a bit quicker because we've already got something in place. Shall we say? And it never really stopped, whereas Scotland didn't do that. But the numbers don't lie with regarding the number of the deaths that we see in London and the UK and England compared to Scotland.
Yeah,
it does make a bit of sad reading. That does.
Now we've already touched on the fact that the regions have been skewed. My guess is that we're going to have exactly the same in terms of sectors as well. I mean, I've got so tired of talking about the fact that housing leads the way. I've run out of new ways to say it. I guess that's not the case this time.
No. 4.5 billion. That's a quick answer, isn't it? That 4.5 billion is in infrastructure projects, whereas in housing it's 3 billion. So yeah, for the first time in a good number of months, I would say at least a year, you and I, when we sit down and talk about this, that's the first time that's really happened. Which we've always said is we've got to be careful about the UK's reliance upon the housing sector, because if anything did come along and trouble that, then construction would be severely hit. So yeah, that's possibly why the government is trying to push out infrastructure projects to support the construction industry as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I mean, I'm certainly not an economist. Anyone that knows me would know that. I can't even balance my own books, let alone anyone else's. But I guess housing would be one of the concerns for the industry, because, you know, if we do go into recession and there are redundancies, people are going to move house less. You know, house prices could fall. That could really have an impact in housing, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. We're seeing at least a 30% decrease in the number of projects. Maybe not the value, but the number of the projects coming through on housing, because a lot of them have already furloughed their staff. A lot of spec housing companies have furloughed their staff. I know some of them are trying to restart that now, and we hope that's going to happen shortly.
One of the questions that I guess is kicking around in my mind, and I would guess in a lot of people's minds now, we've had huge months in February, March, and April. I mean, really way above average, and so on. Are those projects going to kickstart? You know, when Boris Johnson comes on TV and says, "Merry Christmas, war is over, let's all get back to work," can we just kickstart all of those? Or, I mean, you've mentioned materials. My guess is there'll be a bit of skills that we need to worry about. I just, you know, being the pessimist that I am, I just can't see us just turning a tap on and getting back to where we were.
I don't think we can, because we've also got, remember this period of time, we've got 4, 5, 6, what we now, week 6, something like that. There would have been a lot of training programs booked during this period for members of staff to maintain their continuous professional development and their actual accreditations, and that wouldn't have happened. So those people are going to be, are they going to be allowed back on site without those updated accreditations, or are they going to have a holiday period for them? I know they've done it for the MOTs and bits and pieces like that. But are they going to do that for accreditations for staff on site? But that's a health and safety issue, a lot of those are. So are we going to start it? I don't know. If you really want me to nail my colours to the mast, I don't think so. I think we will have a slow rise. We've also got the problems with colleges, people leaving colleges, their exams, etc., 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 and the training of those people to get them back into work, etc. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do in the future.
Yeah, there really is. One of the things that you and I have spoken about quite a lot, I think, is the fact that the industry needs to change. And I think there's a lot that's come out of this COVID-19 lockdown that has really thrown a spotlight on that, the way that we work, the way that we collaborate and that sort of thing. Are you hopeful that we will actually see some sort of change, in terms of the way that the industry works?
I think in some parts there will be. We've got to become more transparent. Here we are, you and I are just talking about will we be starting. We should really know, we should understand the supply chain and what is happening. So we're not talking about, we can all put in algorithms into certain buildings. If it's a £200 million building, X is going to be plastering, X is going to, you don't have to actually know the absolute figures, but that's then taken forward to British Gypsum and London Brick and all of those sort of people so they can plan. What we are very poor at is planning our future. And that's also shown in what's happening in the health as well. We're not joined up. We're disjointed in the way we collect things. There is no central source of construction data. We do our absolute best to do it, but there is no record. And people will say, "Oh, the ONS and things like that." The ONS have actually subcontracted their collection of construction data to a commercial entity, so they don't even do that. So, and it's shown that the ONS haven't got the figures quite correct, shall we say, on the coronavirus victims.
See, there seems to be this. There seems to be a strange double standard with all of this, doesn't there? We're expecting Boris Johnson and Nicola Sturgeon and people like that to stand up on our TV screens and be wholly transparent, every 24 hours. And yet here in construction, transparency seems to have gone in the opposite direction. It's almost a case of this information's mine and you can't have it and I'm not going to talk to you about it. It's bizarre.
Yeah, we're not looking at saying what's the detail in the building. It's just the fact that is there going to be a £200 million building there? Well, number one, there'll be planning permission for it, so we can go and get it anyway. People can go and get that information because it has to go through certain authorities to make sure that it gives planning. And at the end of the day, also, when you start to dig your first hole in the ground on site, there's a great big site hoarding that goes up with all the details probably of what the project's going to be, but you won't tell me. It's one of the biggest frustrations for all of us who research construction information.
And there's a knock-on from that as well, isn't there? I mean, you've mentioned materials. If we're always talking about material shortages and brick shortages and that kind of thing, if we were wholly transparent about what was actually going on rather than what we like people to believe is going on, that wouldn't be a problem. But it also filters down to things like education. If you've got a 10-year program of motorway construction, maybe we should be gearing our colleges and our universities and even our schools to vocational training to have those people ready to go and start work on those projects. So all the time people are keeping that information themselves. We're actually doing our own industry down, aren't we?
Yeah, and just take HS2. It's going to be multi-billion pounds. We know it's going to go from London to Birmingham, Manchester and Split and whatever. A huge project. Well, we're going to need staff and we're going to need personnel and we're going to need engineers. We're going to need foremen. We're going to need all sorts of trades, all sorts of individuals. How do we plan for it if we don't know what's happening, when it's going to start, what's it going to do? It is always perennial question within construction, and that's why we speak about the fact that sometimes projects take so long to get off the ground as well. You know, it's just the fact that there's certain key dates for delivery of bricks, blocks, and etc. And you have to work back from there.
One of the other things that I think is it's kind of a double-edged sword. This I get the impression that there will be certain people that have now experienced working from home who might not be in a rush to get back to an office and have seen the benefits of, you know, more productivity and more time with the family and that kind of thing. But I think it's also thrown up the issue of the fact that there's large parts of the UK where things like internet speeds aren't what they should be. I know you've suffered from that, and you've been very public about that on Twitter. You know, but in this day and age, that shouldn't be the case. You know, you should be able to work anywhere at any time, pretty much, shouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a huge frustration. And to be fair, I should think I'm in the above. I'm in the half or the glass half full section rather than half. Further rurally as you go out, some of the broadband speeds are ridiculously slow. And my issue is I think and it's the same with 3G or 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever it is. They've kind of got us, and the investment, and I'm quite public about this as well, but the investment hasn't matched our commitment to mobile devices, broadband, etc. So they've got us. We're generally going along without smartphones, etc., and we accept when we lose power somewhere or we lose contact with somebody, we accept it. Whereas if you go to South Korea and places like that, nothing of the same. You know, their speeds are fantastic.
And yet, again, you know, you mentioned HS2 earlier. You know, but the key reason for HS2 obviously is capacity and to allow people to move around for work and that kind of thing more easily. You know, if you could sort out the internet speeds and you know, make that more practical for people. I'm not saying we could do away with HS2, and I certainly wouldn't want to do that. But you know, if you can work remotely, you need less capacity on the rail, on the roads, and so on down the line. It seems very short-sighted.
It does seem very short-sighted. But yeah, as you said, I was very vocal the other day. Like the speeds and the dropping out of the internet down here in East Sussex is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, when I can't watch YouTube at the time I want to, I get very angry about it. Now we've talked about technology there. I think one of the things that we are all going to need coming out the other side of this is better access to information. I mean, I think we need accurate and reliable data regardless. But I think at a time when, you know, work may well be harder to come by, and you know, you've got to be a bit more fleet of foot, a bit more agile as a business, you're going to need that information to be dead reliable. Obviously, you know, I described you earlier as the man with his finger on the pulse, but there's more than just you, you know. And we've actually had a question in here from a guy called Simon Jones. How do you gather the information that you provide?
Well, there's a really fantastic team based down in Sutton. That's where our office was and is, shall we say. And we've got a team of researchers that sit there. And what we're very lucky is the fact that because we've been around since 1935 as an organisation, we are a trusted brand and we are a trusted element. So how do we gather? We speak to people and they comment, and they also communicate with us. In olden times, shall we say, 30 years ago, it was all by phone. Obviously now a lot more of this is by email and other forms of messaging. But yes, we speak to people, we get it direct from the horse's mouth. We then verify that information, which is very important because what we've just been talking about secrecy, there's a lot of secrecy, but there's also a lot of mischief making. And we need to be able to say, yes, it's been confirmed. It kind of confirms itself because nobody's going to hopefully tell you incorrect information, but we do still check it, and that's the difference. We check it to make sure that, say for instance, I've just spoken about inland homes or something like that, we'll call them and say to them as well, you know, when's it going to, have you secured this project, etc. We also cross-reference all of our information with the considerate constructor scheme, because when companies register their projects with the considerate constructor scheme, we then cross-reference that data with that to make sure that it's more robust and make sure we can fill in the gaps sometimes of what we have, because sometimes we only get 4 corners, whereas the in-depth analysis we need more and more of. So we collect that from considerate constructors, where it will give us a start date, and that's when we can start to work out, and we can see that from submission of bid to start on site is X amount of weeks. So we can then track that as we go through. So it's real pure data that we collect.
Now, on that basis, I mean, I've seen this up close and personal, and I will let you elaborate slightly. But one of the things, obviously, this is the Demolition Daily live stream. For a demolition contractor looking at that information, it would contain information on, this tower block or this bridge is going to be built, but before that starts, demolition will be required. So there is key information there that could actually would actually drive leads for demolition contractors and other specialists as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly what it does contain. And also, talking about demolition, it also includes where planning permission isn't granted or needed, so we say, for the internal refurbishments of significant office blocks, etc., etc. It will also include the soft strip out, which is obviously part of the demolition and removal, etc. So yeah, that information is included there, which you can go through some planning and trawl through that one by one, but ours is aggregated. So you can actually ask our system, sort of like, just put the word strip out demolition, give me all the projects, and it will give you all the projects. So you don't have to be going through each one of them and looking at them. And then what it can also do is if you register your interest in it keeps you automatically updated. So you don't have to keep going back to that job and writing the number down. You'll be sent an email when something changes. So
and it goes deeper than that as well, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sat here in Epsom or thereabouts, I could actually analyse that data. As you said, strip out demolition in Epsom or in Surrey or in the southeast. So I can really mine that data.
Yeah, you can even do it to a single postcode. But yeah, most people will say if I only work in the likes of Surrey, Kent, and Sussex, or East and West Sussex, just give me those. So yeah, you can mine it to whatever. You can critically analyse it all the way down, and you can say I only want to do it in schools because I'm doing it in that. So you put in schools, and I only want to do it on projects up to 5 million. I'll do it to that. It's all different types of things. It's totally analytical through its process.
The question that everyone will ask, because that's the nature of the world, what does that cost? What does access to that level of information cost?
Well, currently, it's the members actually put the fees themselves, i.e. that it is like turkeys voting for Christmas. So at the present moment in time, it's £2,035 per annum. But what we're doing at the present moment, because of the COVID-19 crisis, what we've said is that you will get an extra 3 months, so it's 15 months for the price of 12, because this period of time now we are sort of like we still don't know what's going on. But yeah, and also if you belong to certain trade bodies, you'll also get a further discount on top of that figure as well, because certain trade bodies have come to us, the likes of Build UK, BISA, painting and decorating. They want their members to use our information, so we've agreed with them to give a further discount on top of that. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not a commission, so I'm not in the process of or in the purpose of actually trying to sell the service. But when you think about that, £2,000 for 15 months, it's probably the price of a cup of coffee and what per day, on one job, and it's paid for, isn't it?
Yeah, that one of the examples I always give up. We went to see a sliding petitions company, and he couldn't get through to a particular business. He was just being blocked by the receptionist, and he said, "Do we know the person who's dealing with this particular job?" We had that data, and he said, "Well, phone him from here." So while we were in the demonstration, while we were in his office, he phoned them, and they said, "No, sorry, that project's actually been let. But if you can get on site tomorrow, down here." There is a sliding folding petition, and the very next day he was down and he got a £10,000 order.
One of the other questions that we've had here is, let's have a look. Steve Hargreaves wants to know: do all contractors work with you? You said you're speaking to, the people that are actually doing the work and have won the contracts. Does everyone work with you?
A good number do, but not all. And that is the frustration, because there'll be requests for in press releases for we haven't got enough staff, etc., etc. And so how can we plan if you won't speak to us? But we're able to gather the information in all different aspects. So just taking the considerate constructor scheme, yeah, we obviously see that they collect about 6,000 projects a year on site. About 6,600. So that's cross-reference with us. So we roughly get, I don't know, at the present moment in time, it's about 9,000 to 10,000 construction awards a year. So 2/3 we get anyway via considerate constructors, and the other third our researchers also get.
And are contractors, when you're speaking to them, are they generally transparent, or is there still a bit of secret squirrel going on?
There's still a bit of secret squirrel, but that's probably been imposed upon them by clients. Clients like to put NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, within the contracts, and that's also a little bit frustrating, because how do you actually implement and police that through the whole supply chain? You just can't, because once you get down to I'm just picking service, door manufacturer, etc. Are you going to sign them up to the actual NDA? No, but obviously fully understand that clients want that, and I fully understand that contractors sign up to it because they want to bid for the work. But what is the ultimate gain for that? Because that client may have gone to planning anyway, so we know it's in the planning portals, which are free to review at all times. So the project is there, and once you go on site, as we say, it's there to see anyway. So
it seems like such a strange thing. And I know, I have a very sort of specific field that I work in, but to my mind, somebody says the word NDA, and my immediate thought as a journalist is, oh, they're up to something. I better have a closer look at this. It just seems crazy, And how do you have a non-disclosure agreement on a 30-story tower block? There's a million tons of concrete there. You're not hiding that from anybody. It makes no sense at all.
No, exactly right, and that's what we're talking about. So have certain elements within it, and I do understand you get the secrecy behind certain should call them pharmaceuticals, because there is obviously trade secrets within there. But we're not asking for that. We're just saying that, is there a building there? Yes, fine. And that's when's it going to start? June, fine. That's it. There isn't the fact that, and are you going to have this kind of product in it or this product in it? No, we're not asking those sort of things. We're just asking for the overall side. Not giving the trade secrets away.
No, absolutely. So the $1 million question, I guess, or it might be even more value on it than that. We're here. We've already said, we had a good January, a very good February, March, and April. What are we looking at when the lockdown is over? Are we heading for a fall? Are we heading for back to normality? Are we heading for a boom? If you had to put your hand on your heart, what would you say?
I think we're going to have 6 months of a fall. The number of tenders that are coming through at the present moment in time. There's a lot of local authority works coming through, and that's because on the 5th or 6th of April, obviously you get the new financial year. So a lot of those bits or tenders are coming out for a lot of school work. So summer works as well, where they're rearranging classrooms or laboratories or etc. But the iconic signature the buildings out there, I think we're going to see a review of what actually do. I think somebody at Barclays said, do we need office blocks anymore? And obviously the whole industry's gone, of course we do. But that question, now the genie's out of the bottle, isn't it? And how we work and how we do things probably will, well, not probably, will be different after the COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's not surprised, because I think it's been coming for a long time, is I think it's given opportunity for people to see an alternative way. I know my parents, who are tucked away down in Sussex as well, you know, part of their weekly routine is going off to the local Sainsbury's and doing their shopping. Well, they can't do that. They're now doing online shopping. Chances are they're not going back. You know, and when you look at, you know, in my local high street, which is, you know, 300 yards away from where I'm sat now, you know, there's a lot of it boarded up. You know, I'd be very surprised if more than half of that reopened, because a lot of it is not unnecessary, but you could do it another way and probably do it a better way as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. And I don't want to, you know, probably through a little bit of nostalgia, but I don't want that to happen because of my childhood of going to the shops, etc., etc. But realistically, you're right. My dad is, what's my dad? 88, and he does online shopping. So, whereas he used to go to Tesco's on a weekly basis on a Thursday or Friday, you know, now he does online shopping. So he'll pop out for probably for the odd bit of milk and things like that. But when you're talking about tins, washing up liquid, etc., the heavy stuff, get it delivered.
Yeah, I mean, trying to put a positive spin on it. And again, it's something you and I have touched on before. Is, you know, we've got a situation where the UK construction industry never builds as many houses as we need. But if we've got, you know, partial or possibly entire high streets that are now devoid of shops, you know, a program of repurposing, you could pretty much solve the housing crisis and repopulate and regenerate those high streets one fell swoop, couldn't you?
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. What we've got to do is also speak to councils, because they're obviously getting a huge hit regarding council tax or rates, etc. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Repurpose those buildings into accommodation, and it wouldn't take as long as what, you know. I think the target was set out as something like 250,000 units a year for the next 5 years. Well, probably if you repurpose some of those shops, you could hit quite a lot of that target via that method.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Look, I guess the final question really is, what is your situation now? Are you going to be at home this time next month, or are you expected to be back in the office?
Truthfully, I'll be here. I can't see us returning in the next 4 weeks. Not only that, there's also the social distancing, which I understand, you know, that is going to carry on. We haven't got the largest of offices, so therefore we won't be going back within the next 4 weeks. What we did do, and I said before, a couple of years ago, we were lucky. We really invested heavily in our IT, and that has paid dividends in what we're doing at the present moment in time. It has made us work so much more productively, effectively in our homes, than having to go all the way to Sutton and work from there.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I mean, I work from home most of the time anyway. But, you know, given what I've been doing for the last 6 or 7 weeks, you know, it has made me think very, very closely about what I do in the future. You know, I still like to get out on site and take my photographs and shoot the videos and stuff, but there's an awful lot you can do remotely, as we're proving now, you know, and I there's a bit of me that will be reluctant to give some of that up. You know, I still want a bit of fresh air in my lungs, but, you know, the thought of sitting here talking to people rather than schlepping halfway up the country, there's a lot to be said for it.
Well, yeah, my niece is an architect, and she had to go and do evaluation for a project in North London last week, but she didn't, obviously. But they had site bought a GoPro, and they wandered around the site with that technology, going through saying, yes, this is done, yes, this is done. And I can only see that being part of where construction goes to. That type of camera or something fixed to helmets. What will happen is the fact that everybody will become more accountable. That's the downside of it. Well, for people, but it'll be transparent. You won't be able to say, yes, I'll put the roof on when you're looking actually on site and sniggering on the other end of the telephone when you know damn well you haven't put the roof on. But if you've got a GoPro or some type of HD kind of camera on your helmet or whatever, that's quite easy, isn't it? I think, and then you've got that. If you take BIM into the situation, you've got that on file, and you can keep it, maintain it. And if there is anything comes up in the future, there you go. You just revert back to that file that day. It will be daily numbered on from what the video is from, or the footage is from, and you go back to that day. But you will become accountable.
No, you're dead right, Neil. And well, thankfully, I'm only accountable to me, so I'm not too worried about that. Listen, I really appreciate your time today. Obviously, regardless of what happens over the next 4 weeks, there's an open invitation for you to do this again in 4 weeks' time. Hopefully, there's another big bumper month, and hopefully, a few people are back at work and actually making the most of that bumper work as well. In the meantime, Neil, thanks so much. Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks ever so much for your time, Neil. I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers now. Just now, Neil's gone. Had another comment here from Scott in the States there about the internet. That's one of the things, or one of the challenges that I've had. We've got a real hot and cold situation here. I've got really, really super fast broadband here. So first thing in the morning, much as Scott has described there, mine is as fast as anything. I can upload and download videos like they're going out of fashion. But once the wife and the children, and I say children, I mean, they're in their 20s, once they come online and that kind of thing, all of that suddenly goes out the window, and I can be struggling. We've certainly had a few issues over the period, particularly with our social club on a Wednesday night, which we're doing again next Wednesday, but I'll come back to that a bit later. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that this COVID crisis has really revealed. I think if all you're doing internet-wise is occasionally looking at YouTube of an evening after a day at work, that's one thing. I think if you're working there day in, day out, and trying to keep up with work and looking at video, and as Neil was just described, GoPro video of sites and that kind of thing, 5G can't come soon enough. Probably 10G or 12G or whatever it might be after that. We definitely need that because this is a changing world, and the way that we're all working is a very, very different prospect. Not really much more I can tell you today. Obviously, we'll be back here again at 3 o'clock tomorrow. I'd like to think we'll have a guest in line. We've had one that's been on and off for more than a week now, and I will nail him down at some point. It just doesn't seem to be working particularly well at the moment. It seems like every time I'm busy, he's not, and vice versa. But between now and then, I'd like to say a big thank you to Neil Edwards for giving up his time today. The information, I look at the BC Live league table on a fairly regular basis, basically just to keep my finger on the pulse and to get a handle on what's there. But it's only, I think, when you actually delve down and start looking at the story behind the story behind the story with some of these things. You mentioned the job that BAM Nuttall have got. When you mine down, and that information will continue to be updated. When you mine down, you can see exactly where that job is going to be taking place, what specialist subcontractors and demolition work is going to be required, and so on and so on and so on. It's such a rich source of information, and I genuinely think, which is part of the reason I'm doing this live stream at the moment, I think the one big thing that will come out of all of this is our need for reliable, accurate, and verified data. Literally straight from the horse's mouth, which is exactly what the BC Live league table and the Sereno system that sits behind it provides. So I'm going to wish you all a very safe afternoon. Look after yourself, look after your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I'll be back here again at 3 o'clock tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for your comments and your input today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much indeed.